Welcome, it's your friendly neighborhood Badger here. Look at you, you're getting the second Badger video of the league. I just have another build that I want to show off. It's super cool. You might have seen that little intro at the start there, and you might have seen this build before. Now, if you have seen this build before, it's been kind of trawling its way through the depths of YouTube and Reddit. A bunch of crazy cool build creators that have no recognition are playing this build and destroying all content. But I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about this build, because I thought I was the first one to kind of figure this out. That's a stupid thing to think in the Path of Exile community, isn't it? And because, you know, I'm still working and don't have full time to play this game, I kind of took a while to build this build. Now, what is it? You might have seen a mod before on Crucible weapons, which is this one right here. Totems explode on death, dealing a certain amount of their life as physical damage. This can go anywhere from 200 to 300% on one-handed weapons, or 400 to 600% on two-handed weapons. I'll talk about the rest of it, but basically, this means we can have totems that do huge explosions. Now, me and a few people in my guild, we're kind of playing around how best to do this. We thought like, oh man, this is broken. No one's figured this out yet. Oh, we're going to figure... A bunch of people had figured it out. I just hadn't looked on PoE Ninja, or I hadn't trawled around. But we were like, okay, maybe we could use Elementalist Ignite. You know, basically 15,000 life on a rejuvenation totem. 600% of 15,000 life is close to 100,000 flat physical damage. Scaling Ignite off that could be absolutely massive on Elemental. So we're like, whoa! And then we're like, hang on, is there a way that we could like abuse totem limit and like explode? What happens if you try to create more totems than you have totem limit? Turns out traps are a really good way of getting around that. In my staff right here, I have Rejuvenation Totem linked to trap support, cluster trap support, multiple trap support, and multiple totems. This means one press throws 5 traps on the ground. They explode for 2 totems each. That's basically 10 totems on the ground there. 7 of them exploded, and then 3 of them spawned because my maximum totem limit is 3 with multiple totems. If I throw 30 traps, or I guess what, 28 traps on the ground. If I throw 28 on the ground, 25 of them are going to explode, and 3 are going to be right here. So what does that really mean? That's 100,000 damage per totem, roundabout, times 25. 2.5 million base damage explode. Granted, all of the traps actually explode and hit the boss. That we're talking base damage. I'm not talking that's my DPS. I'm talking the base damage before scaling. Now, there's a few other things to talk about with this build, but before we do, let's just showcase a little bit of a running around in a map right here. I'll just do this lair map. It's got a couple of like negative resistance mods, that sort of thing. We are playing a Pathfinder right here. Let me just reset that flask, because we want to be using flasks, and there's a bunch of other reasons why as well. Keep in mind, for the rest of this explanation, you saw at the start as well, I'm level 76. I don't have almost 20 passives. I might even have some passives in the story that I don't have yet. Alright. This build is severely unoptimized. 2 of my ascendancy points are doing nothing for me because they're the poison Pathfinder ascendancy points, and I am no longer poison. I am full cold convert, and I'll talk about that right after here as well, because there's a bunch of people doing a bunch of different things on this build. Now, you'll notice here, basically, the playstyle is just throwing down traps. They explode every time that they get triggered. As I said, 7 of the 10 totems that get spawned explode, and then a bunch of them sit on the ground there as well. Usually being rejuvenation totems, I would gain some health from them, but I actually have Val Pact at the moment, and I'll talk about that in a moment as well. I didn't mean to have Val Pact, but it's something that I'm kind of using now on the build. A couple of things. Yep, I do need phasing. Yep, my survivability is not great, as you can see right there. I'm going to leave that in the video because, hey, this build's still happening. Right, let's jump on through and I'll just keep explaining a little bit more about the build. Yeah, a bunch of people are going Poison Pathfinder because you can reach Poison Cap extremely quickly. You can get Poison Prolif. As you can see, the clear on this build is not amazing. I'm kind of just running around. Anything that, you know, my totems explode on does die instantly, but also my defenses as well right now are not amazing. They're going to be quite good once I get up to about level 90, 91. My spell suppression is pretty terrible. My armor is not the greatest right now. My chaos res is in the negatives. So there's quite a few things that are not great on this build. One thing that is great on this build, though, is damage, as you might have seen at the start there, and we'll see on the boss here as well. I should be able to one-shot the boss at the end here. You'll also see my skill bar. I have, what, Flame Dash and the totems themselves. That is it. That is all that I have. Well, and a couple of auras that you can see up the top here as well that I am using on my second skill bar there. But there's still a bunch of auras that I am not using yet. I'm basically kind of going to be aura stacking a little bit on this character because we can. We can use a bunch of our passives to, you know, use clusters and everything like that. Let me concentrate here just so I don't fully die in this map because it's actually dangerous. What is it? Negative minus max. And all damage from monsters always ignites. Alright, let's get onto the boss right here so you can see what's going on. Then I'll talk more in depth about the build. Alright, throw some traps down. And he's dead. Pretty easy going. Now, I think my trap trigger radius could be a little bit bigger, meaning that I should, you know, get more of those traps to actually explode on the boss. Not all of them are exploding. You might have seen there, only a few of them actually exploded because the trap trigger radius is not big enough. Let's jump right out. Let's talk about a couple of things. As I said, I talked about the links on the character. Those links are pretty darn nice, but there's a bunch of other people doing a bunch of different things on this build. All right. We are going to quickly switch over to, let's have a little look at some other people, what they're actually doing with these builds. This is someone doing an Inquisitor cold convert. Now using Leadership's Price, so getting Brittle, Sap, Scorch, that sort of thing, instead of chilling and freezing, using a Diala's Malefaction just to get a bunch of plus levels, and their Rejuvenation Totem plus an Empower level 4 in there. They're using Charge Traps instead of Multi-Traps. This might be a better play. I'm not really that sure. I need to try and figure that out myself, honestly, to see what actually is better. They're doing things like scaling Herald of Purity and Herald of Ash, and then, you know, pumping up with Taste of Hate. This is an example of the Poison Pathfinder that someone's doing. Basically, very similar, you know, using Obliterations, getting 40% of the Fizz damage as extra Chaos, using a Ming's Heart to get 72% as extra Chaos as well there. Then a bunch of other stuff through here. More of the Pathfinder that they're doing right here. So they're going into, you know, all of this stuff right here. Grabbing our Master Toxicist and Master Surgeon and Nature's Boon. Not actually using Nature's Reprisal, even though that's probably a really, really good idea here, but they're actually just using the Master Surgeon abuse here with a Blood Grip to get increased life recovery from flasks, and forgoing the mana cost using a Slave Driver's Hand. Now that's another big thing to talk about with this build. As I said, I'm definitely not the first one to be looking at this. I've looked at a bunch of POBs and I'm kind of crafting my own, but also kind of taking it as I go. And as I said, really, really sketchy at the moment, but it's getting better and better as we go along. All right. So the character itself, the mana cost of the Rejuvenation Totem with all of the links is about 166 mana. Now, I'm forgoing quite a lot of that. I can actually get it down to about, 19 mana with a reduced mana cost craft on the flask itself, and then reduced mana cost on my rings, and using a reduced mana cost anoint as well as quite a few jewels that have reduced mana cost of skills on them as well, but also double dipping on totem life and getting a bunch of max life through there as well. As you can see, my, you know what, I'm actually going to change that right now because my Ascendancy is going to look a little bit different here. Let me see if I've got enough respec points to do that right here. My Ascendancy, we're going out of these ones. Boom, 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 boom. We're actually going to be hitting our Master Surgeon and our Master Alchemist here as well. Just like that. And that's my ascendancy right there, okay? Our cluster jewel needs a little bit more leveling up. We're going to be using some medium clusters, some flask clusters, and some totem clusters for more cluster life. We're going to be getting a bunch more suppression on the tree from here, and potentially from here as well, but I don't think I need all of those nodes right there. We're also going to be hitting Master Sapper, but as I said, I've got a bunch to go on this character. DPS is already absolutely insane. So how am I actually scaling damage on the character? That's the last thing we'll turn our attention to. We are going cold conversion, full cold conversion from Crimsorrow, but later I'm going to be using the Mastery on the tree for 40% cold conversion, and then using some gloves to get the extra 60%. You can get a bunch through Eldritch Implicits and a craft on the gloves themselves, and then you can get up to 100%. We're using a lightning coil for a bunch of our fizz damage taken as lightning damage. I do want to increase my maximum lightning resistance to help my physical damage there as well, but it's not really what we're doing. The biggest damage is actually going to be coming from our Heat Shiver. Now, a bunch of you know Heat Shiver's pretty busted. We're scaling Hatred, we're scaling all of our cold damage, we're scaling a little bit of Chill Effect as well and Freeze Effect, which does mean that pretty much in every boss with the crazy flat damage that we're hitting, we are getting that 100% of cold damage as extra fire damage against frozen enemies, because most bosses in the game can be frozen, they just can't be slowed below a certain amount. That's basically how the build is. You can see how unoptimized it is just by seeing I don't even have an Abyss Jewel in right here. The build is functioning awesomely. We just need to basically level up, get those defenses up, and basically double our damage even further. And I'll be, I guess, one-shotting most of the stuff in the game. Just to talk about numbers for a little bit, as I did, talk a little bit about numbers to begin with, I'm just going to switch right back over to a little bit of my POB right here. It's close to the POB that I'm using, but still not actually quite there. But we can see right here that our totem life is 15,000 with all of the stuff that we do have right here. There's a couple of other increases to totem life that I am going to make on the build, and hopefully we're going to get that to about 20,000. But this does mean that with our trap limit, we're going to be having about 30 traps on the ground, and this is going to mean about 57 traps will be exploding for damage on bosses. So you can do the math yourself. 15,000 times 600%, or basically 600% of 15,000, it's about 100,000, right? And then we're having 50, let's just say a conservative estimate, 50 of those, right? 100,000, 50, it's 50 million base explode DPS. And then we start scaling that even more. So I should be able to start one-shotting bosses on this build right here. I'll put a random POB of my build down below, but as I said, it's so scuffed. Like, don't follow it. Follow people on POB, they're doing way, way better than me. I just wanted to showcase this build. It's not my build, but I had a lot of fun thinking it was my build for a while. That's all I really have to say, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Yeah, I'll catch you next time, I guess. Whenever next time will be. See ya.